The injured man leaned against her, and they steadily hobbled to the house. "Thank you." The injured man's breath was weak and his sentences were broken. Evelina sat him on a spare cot by the fireplace. She quickly retrieved the pail of water to clean his wounds. "That thing out there. I don't know what it was, but it was not of this world. Shush now. You're safe." She tore his already ripped shirt to see the slashes across his side. "Keep your hand on my arm. Keep it there and squeeze it." He did as she instructed. The wound was deep and he was bleeding out quickly. No animal made marks like this. These were two perfectly spaced punctures that dragged across his body. There was even a light imprint of 4 teeth between the punctures. His skin was getting colder and he shivered even under the warm fire. The light grip he had on her arm began to fade. Evelina kept her hand steady as she threaded a needle to close his wounds. She turned to him when his hand fell from her. "Sir." "No, wake up. Stay with me." She gripped his shoulders and shook him. Her voice grew louder as she shook the stranger. "Evelina." Adrian called from the bedroom. "Is everything fine?" "Yes, stay in bed. I am helping an injured man. He was attacked." "Attacked? Then the British are close." She could hear her husband shifting around. "Adrian Emerson, you stay in that bed or so help me God I will break your other leg." The room went quiet for a moment. "Are you sure you are fine?" "Yes." Evelina could feel the man's pulse slowing. "He'll sleep this off and be gone by morning. I promise. Kenneth and I will be there shortly." "If you're sure," Adrian replied. Evelina's hands shook slightly. She never felt so out of control and helpless before. This was her first life where she could maintain a quiet existence. Would she dare risk it to save a stranger's life? "Damn you, Faustus!" she swore before her pupils widened and turned violet. Evelina grabbed the man's head. She leaned in, desperately smashing her lips against his. The mere touch rejuvenated his body. The slashes across his torso and wound on his forehead closed instantly. The man's eyes opened wide, and he inhaled sharply, gaining use of his lungs again. Evelina let his head go, her eyes returning to normal. The stranger looked around the room, disoriented. There. Evelina comforted him. "You will be just fine." "What did you do to me?" "I helped you." She stayed calm, ready to deflect any suspicions he might have. "I told you I would help." He shook his head. "I was dying. I felt myself crossing over. There's no way a simple woman could have revived me. You were in shock. It's common for people to see blood and panic. You only had a slight head wound." The man shook his head, sliding back on the couch to avoid her touch. "Your eyes. They were glowing. That happens in the fire's light." Evelina stood. "I believe my husband has some spare clothes you can wear so you can throw out those bloody rags." The man stood and gripped her arm. "You will not make me seem crazy. First that thing in the woods, and now you. I know what I saw." "Let go of me," she said, tugging, but he held tight. "I will remind you that regardless of what you think you saw, I helped you. You're one of them. You're like that demon who attacked us at camp. I saved you. Now let me go." She glared at him, eyes narrowed, slits burning through him. The stranger released her. "You've overstayed your welcome." Evelina turned to check on Kenneth sleeping in his basket. "It is time for you to." She didn't see the attack coming. The stranger grabbed his musket and forced the bayonet through her back. Evelina looked down, startled at the bloody blade sticking out of her stomach. The stranger withdrew the weapon quickly. Evelina's legs gave out, and she fell to the ground. "Come on. I know you can heal yourself." The man was crazed, ranting as she bled out. "I'm going to watch you. You won't be able to deny it then." Evelina rolled onto her back. The stranger was standing over her. Without practice, her abilities were limited. She couldn't absorb his life force when he was so far away. Her hand reached out to grab his leg, but he kicked her away. "Do it. Heal yourself." The stranger snapped. The noise made Kenneth stir in his basket. The 18-month-old cried, eyes searching for a familiar face. The stranger stepped closer to the basket. "This is your son. So he's just like you. How many demons like you are there? Leave him alone." Evelina winced, hand applying pressure to her stomach. "You don't want to give me answers? Fine. I'll force them out of you." He raised his musket high and slammed it down through the basket. "No." Blood splattered the side of her face. Kenneth's cries amplified before going quiet. The bayonet lifted. Her eyes widened at the new blood dripping from the sharp point. "You'll save your child. I know you will." Evelina's hands curled. Her physical pain turned into pure anger. Tears burned her sight, and her pupils turned violet. Her eyes glowed brighter than the red flames of the fireplace. "I knew it." The stranger almost cheered. "You are not of this world." Her body levitated, quickly closing the distance between them. Her hands gripped his head, and she inhaled. The oxygen flowed from the stranger's open mouth. Her nails dug into his jaw, drawing blood as his jawbone slowly crunched. The holes in her stomach and back healed themselves. The man's eyes dilated, his vision foggy as his life drained away. The grip on his weapon loosened. "Evelina." "Adrian, no." Her husband's voice pulled her back. The man regained his breath, collecting himself quickly. He stabbed his bayonet through Evelina's heart. The violet glow left her eyes, and her hands fell from his face. Lightheaded and weak, the man fell backward. The stranger stumbled back, yanking the bayonet from her chest. The blade tore her heart in two beneath the flesh. Evelina collapsed to the ground, and her blood spilled out of her chest and mouth. Her dying breath flowed to Kenneth's mouth. Unfortunately, it was not enough to heal the child. Adrian hobbled into the other room on his injured leg. He could smell the odor of blood all over the room. In the flickering light, Adrian saw his wife laying on the ground in a pool of blood. Kenneth's blood was spilling out in the basket he lay in. Adrian's hands clenched the back of the couch for support. The air in his lungs was restricted. Before he could approach his family, Adrian noticed the man in his home. "Another one. You demons are worse than the damn redcoats." The man stood. Even with his wounded leg, Adrian charged the man. The two fought, stumbling over the small room. Adrian gripped the stranger's throat tight. The man gasped for air, shoving the base of his empty musket against Adrian's abdomen. Adrian grunted, clenching his teeth as his hands squeezed tighter. The bayonet stabbed through his chest, and Adrian let out a cry of anguish. He stumbled back, almost losing balance on his injured leg. Adrian's rage pushed him to fight on as he bled out through the hole in his chest. He punched the stranger before smashing the man's skull against the fireplace repeatedly. Exhausted, Adrian fell to the ground. He crawled over to his wife. Evelina's eyes were open, but her pulse had stopped. Adrian smoothed her hair back, kissing her face as he cried. He reached and pulled Kenneth out of the basket. With her last breath, Evelina gave her son an additional minute of life. But the baby's pulse was quickly weakening. Adrian held his son and said a tearful goodbye before Kenneth stopped breathing. "I will be with you both soon," Adrian said, his life about to end. "I wouldn't be so sure, my friend." A low voice spoke up as a cloaked man emerged from the shadows. "You are quite the warrior." Adrian's eyes were closing. The fire had blown out during the fight, leaving the room blanketed in darkness. A figure stepped closer and knelt in front of him. All Adrian could make out was a menacing smile. Two fangs extended out. "But I will make you a god, my warrior prince."